Welcome to FUNC YOU UP, the podcast that gives you the best of functional medicine, nutrition, and wellness in 8 minutes or less.
Hey everyone, this is Michelle Miller, clinical nutritionist.
And Samantha Wineke, functional medicine health coach.
Welcome back to FUNC YOU UP. Today we have a very cool topic, intermittent fasting.
So I'm sure some of you guys have heard about this, and I know we kind of alluded to it in the last episode.
Yeah, we got some good feedback when we talked about the detoxing versus juice cleanses, all these different kind of industry jargon that we use, and detoxing cleanses, juice, shake, smoothie, what to do. We did mention this idea of using fasting as a form of detoxing too, and we just wanted to clarify the best way to do that in some quick tips of application that you can add this into your own life and get some of those benefits.
So for those of you who haven't heard of intermittent fasting before, I'll give you a quick explanation. So the idea is that you have a feeding window, which is the amount of time per day that you're eating, and then a fasting window, the amount of time per day that you aren't eating. So usually your fasting window will comprise of the time that you're sleeping throughout the night, whether that's 8 hours or more or less, and then any additional time. So for most people, they wake up, they eat breakfast. Let's say you eat breakfast at 8 a.m., and then you eat all day and you have dinner at 8 p.m. So for you, your feeding window would be 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. when you finish dinner. And then your fasting window would be from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. So the idea of what we're doing is we're shortening that feeding window and extending that fasting window. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of discussion about the benefits of what's happening by allowing yourself plenty of time to fast. And we will usually work with clients if they're interested in intermittent fasting. Well, truthfully, I think anyone would benefit from at least from 12 hours of fasting. I think that's a pretty safe thing to do as long as your blood sugar is fairly stabilized during the 12 hours of eating. But there's a lot of really cool benefits from fasting when you're fasting between 12 and 16 hours. But can you just kind of break down what's happening from a fat burning perspective? Because I think that's really what interests a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah. So most people are interested in it because it's a quicker way to lose weight. And that's because basically what's happening is when you're eating throughout the day, most of the time you're having some carbohydrates, and then those are turning into sugar when you eat them, glucose. And your cells use that glucose for energy. But if you're in a fasted state, your cells go into this kind of starvation mode. And what's happening there is they're looking for energy and they can't find it in the form of glucose. So the next best option is to go to fat. And they mainly use triglycerides as their form of fuel. So what this will do is it will lower your triglycerides, helping out your cholesterol levels and helping you to lose weight and burn fat.
That's interesting because there's a correlation between high triglyceride levels and diabetes and heart disease and just general inflammation. And it's interesting because fasting, some of the benefits are improved blood sugar levels, decreased risk of heart disease, decreased inflammation. So it makes sense how that all is correlated.
Absolutely. And increasing insulin sensitivity.
I love that. Yeah. So when applying fasting to your life, we always say start with 12 hours. And the cool thing is that you're still consuming the same amount of calories. So let's say you're normally on a 2,000 calorie diet. You're now just compressing that into your eating window. You don't necessarily need to eat less when you're first starting. Now, of course, we will always recommend eating a diet that's full of real foods, minimal processed foods, nothing that's packaged, that could, that's shelf stable. You want things that will spoil because they're real live foods. But it's cool because, let's say my eating window is going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. My fasting window is going to be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. A lot of research, especially for gut health benefits, shows you don't even need to do that every single day. Even 4 days a week shows some benefits to the gut microbiome and the diversity of the bacteria there. So we're seeing lots of different health conditions improved just by fasting, whether it be cardiovascular function, weight loss, chronic disease, inflammation, digestion. There's a lot of benefits from it. And I think everyone should kind of start by trying out that 12-hour window. Now, we do find that some women do better sticking with the 12 to 14-hour fasting window versus some men, just strictly because of the hormone changes, can feel a little bit more comfortable going into the 14 to 16-hour window of fasting. I think it's really individual for a lot of people. Play around with it. I also think it's cool to play around with maybe doing cardio in a fasting state in the morning, which a lot of people aren't comfortable with. But trying that to see during your fasting hour, do you actually feel like your performance has improved a little bit?
Yeah, some people also see improved weight loss if they exercise in a fasted state and even stay fasted for an hour or two afterwards.
But again, I think the biggest thing is listening to your body and testing it out. I think it's interesting to play around in the fasting state a bit. And Samantha uses a really great analogy with her patients about comparing this to a highway. That doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect way of fasting. When you review that, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we say fasting, we mean just consuming water, but we do understand that that can be difficult, right? So the way that we think about it is when you're fasting, you're basically allowing for your body to repair and heal. So you can use the analogy of a highway that's under construction. So if you were to block off the highway and it would be under construction, no cars would be allowed in. And this would be fully fasting, right? Only drinking water. However, let's say you decide you need that small cup of coffee in the morning. So basically that's like opening a little side lane for some cars to get through, but still you're getting a lot of repair done. You're still reconstructing that road. So what we're basically saying here is if you need to, let's say, have a cup of black coffee or take a supplement in the morning or something, that will require metabolic processes, but it's still, I would say, way more beneficial than doing nothing.
Absolutely. No, I love that so much. Sometimes we can find some fanatics with fasting, and I don't think there's, a black and white way of doing this. I think there's a lot of gray, and based on each individual, how they feel, especially people who need to take certain medications, obviously that's going to require metabolic processes. So I love what you said. Some repair, some cleanup of the system is better than nothing.
How do you feel best, Michelle?
I found cardio in a fasting state before 8 a.m. feels best for me. I usually like to start my fast 7 or 8. If it's the weekend, I'm sleeping in a little bit more. I love to push my fasting window a little bit longer. And I really feel as long as during my feeding window, I'm eating every 3 hours, I'm prone to hypoglycemia or like reactive hypoglycemia. So as long as I'm eating every 3 hours during my feeding window, I actually feel really well. I also noticed my sleep is a lot better too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel that too. Yeah, I feel best sticking to about 12 hours. I have to be careful about my adrenals. So I like to get that kind of minimum amount of time, but also be eating every 3 hours during my 12-hour feeding window. So play around with it. It's really whatever works best for you.
Yeah. Do you ever find with supporting the adrenals, if you're fasting, you'll start with like warm water with a pinch of sea salt in the morning?
Yeah, that can be super helpful. So what Michelle's referring to is like a high quality sea salt. If you kind of sprinkle a little bit of that into your water in the morning, that can help with your adrenal function. Maybe even throw in a little squeeze of lemon.
Yeah, I used to do a pinch of the Real Salt brand sea salt. It's called Real Salt. And that was a good way of me introing into fasting too. Awesome. Well, that's our time today. Send us your questions on intermittent fasting, any experiences you've had, and we will catch you next time on Funk You Up.
Have a great week, everyone.
You've been listening to Funk You Up. Be sure to like, review, and subscribe for more daily tips on living well.